I'm in a band, I'm doing comedy, I'm in these two worlds, and to me, they're very, very similar.
Of course, yeah.
And I'm listening to you talk about wrestling, the wrestling industry. I'm like, sounds like being in a band.
Yeah.
Sounds like the music industry. So at what point were you like, this is something I've always wanted to do. Now's the right time.
Yeah, well, I was in bands when I was in high school.
Yeah.
I was playing in bands when I was 14 years old. First band was called Primitive Means. Then the second band I was in, which was our high school band, was called Scimitar, the curved sword that Sinbad the Sailor uses.
What kind of music?
It was heavy metal. Like, you know, we were a 3-piece band, but we played mostly Metallica and Iron Maiden, who are 2 guitar bands, but it didn't matter at the time. You just played with what you could play, right?
You can only do the one part of the Metallica
but
song.
I was the bass player, so I was okay.
Okay, yeah.
You know, playing with my fingers like Cliff Burton and Steve Harris. And I remember we were always rehearsing, jamming, we called it, in my friend's basement, my friend's parents' basement. And then we started to play, you know, parties and that sort of thing. Well, when you go to these parties, you know, a lot of the girls don't just want to hear, you know, Seek and Destroy and the Four Horsemen and Caught Somewhere in Time and Number of the Beast.
Yeah. Try playing Goblin metal for them. You know what I mean?
I remember one time
they ain't exactly showing up in droves.
Yeah,
you know?
Don't you know anything that we can dance to or whatever they said? And so we had to learn Talk Dirty to Me by Poison and Long Way to Love by Brittany Fox. And I remember just like, these songs are terrible, but we have to play them because if we don't, then the girls don't want to watch our band. And then also we would not have any singing because it's very hard to play those songs and sing. And I remember we used to rehearse You Really Got Me. And we had the garage door open during the summer. We rehearsed, and these girls would walk home from school every day. We'd get home early, and I remember the one day they finally went, "Don't you know another song? And doesn't anybody sing?" And I was like, well, fuck, I guess I'll sing.
Yeah, so that's like, wait, hold on. Ladies like a singer.
Singer. Ladies like a singer. And music they can dance to.
You start doing your vocal warm-ups. You're like, all right, I'm ready.
So then I remember we would record everything. So then I'm down on my knees playing bass and singing into the boombox. So that's kind of how I started playing in bands, and then always continued to play. Then got into wrestling and still dabbled in music, but didn't really focus on it much. And then about 98 or so, I was like, I really want to start a band and get going. And that's kind of what was the genesis of where Fozzy started.
And from the get, you're like, just to be clear, I will be singing.
Well, yeah, because at that point, it's like my bass playing skills were amazing when I was 17.
Yeah.
And then they just stopped. So, I'm not, you know, because then you got the Flea stuff's going on. You got Dream Theater stuff and Rush stuff. But I was really good at those first 3 Metallica records and the first 4 or 5 Maiden records. I can play most of the stuff from those albums to this day and nothing else.
Yeah.
So I just said I will concentrate on the singing aspect of things.
You have to be in the most successful band to ever come from the wrestling world.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt about it.
There's not even close, right?
Yeah, and
why do you think that is?
Well, because perseverance, for one. For two, we had to work twice as hard to get people's respect because I was in the band. How can a wrestler possibly sing? How can a goblin possibly do comedy? Like, people have a very closed-minded view.
They really do. And the jury is still out, but we'll get them. We'll get them.
So we just ignored it. We when we first started, I think people expected us to sing songs about body slams and suplexes and perform in a ring.
Why would they want that?
You know, I'm going to be drop kicking people during the show, and it's like, we don't do that. We don't combine the two because you can't. Because then it's just a novelty. You know what I mean?
How much of the Fozzy fan base are wrestling fans? How much overlaps in the Venn diagram, or have they really become these two things? Because I have found with my band Necrogoblicon and the podcast and the comedy stuff, there's definitely overlay. But ideally, they both kind of grow as their own unique things. And it's okay if you love Necrogoblicon and aren't into the podcast or vice versa, right?
It's not as much of a divisive thing. Not that it ever was, but I think at first there was a lot of people coming to check out the band just because it's Chris Jericho. And they don't know any of these songs that we're playing.
Yeah.
There's probably the majority are both, and more Jericho fans and Fozzy fans. And there's a whole contingency that's just Fozzy. Doesn't care about wrestling, could care less either way. And when I started using Judas as my theme song in AEW a few years ago, That's when Judas started really becoming a hit. It was already a hit out of the gates for whatever reason. And once again, it's like we said, you don't know what's going to hit or why. Judas, I remember thinking, I hope it gets 3 million YouTube views like over the course of my lifetime. It had 1 million in 1 week. And it was like, how did that even happen? You know, you go to a Tampa Bay Bucks game and they're playing Judas, or the Minnesota Vikings, or Columbus Blue Jackets play Judas every game. How does that happen? I don't know. It doesn't matter. It happened. Now the band has a hit song, the elusive hit song. Is it as big as Enter Sandman? No, but it's our version of it. It's the song that most people know.
Yep.
And now you've got something. And I never realized how important rock radio is still until you start getting played on rock radio. And that's not because of wrestling, that's because of good music. And so now you've got a lot of people that just want to hear the tunes and love the band for the band, and that's the way it should be.
Yeah.
If you like wrestling and Jericho too, or don't, that's fine as well.
Yeah. I do want to check in, before we get you out of here, with young Jericho in that garage. Girls are passing him by. He gets a glimpse of Jericho today. What's he geeking out most about? Is it all of these championship belts and headlining like all these amazing wrestling events? Or is it like touring with Iron Maiden and doing this? Or is it a little of both?
I think if I could whittle it down to one thing, it's that I was a kid that had a dream, actually 2 dreams, both of them seemingly impossible. How do you achieve this? And here we are, 35 plus years later, and I've gotten the chance to do them both at the highest of level or high level, and just get a chance to make people happy by doing something that I always wanted to do and getting to travel the world and doing it. I know that sounds a little cheesy, but it really is true. Like, how many people had a dream, accomplish it, and get to travel and still do it decades later? That's something that I take very seriously too. Like, I go out of my way now to think of cool projects and cool things to keep the people that appreciate my work happy. And if they want to live vicariously through this stuff, then it's my responsibility to give them cool things to live vicariously through and give them some happiness and some hope, maybe if they're not having a great day. That's kind of the thing I would geek out the most to.
Yeah,
and opening for Iron Maiden.
Yeah. And Iron Maiden.
Yeah.
Well said.